Back on HQ, Tony Pollard coming off a bye and is set to have a favorable matchup this week against the Colts. So much so that Jamie Eisenberg made Pollard his start of the week. Overall this season, the Colts have allowed the second most rushing yards per game. For more on Pollard and the other players to lock into your fantasy football lineup this week, we give you Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richards for Week 6 starts and sits.
Great opportunity for Tony Pollard. I mean, looking at this game that he should have, Dave, coming off the bye week, last time we saw him, he had a huge game against the Miami Dolphins, 22 carries, over 15 fantasy points. He's been over 15 fantasy points 3 or 4 times this season. And you look at this Colts run defense. They are number 9 in most fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. The setup is perfect for Pollard. I even think Tajay Spears is a great sleeper this week. He's coming off back-to-back games with at least 10 PPR points. But you look at the Colts, Tank Bigsby just beat them up. 3 running backs so far this season, over 15 fantasy points per game. I love the setup for Tony Pollard. He's a top 10 running back going into this week.
I love where you're coming from on this. There's 2 things that I really love about Pollard. Number one, 60% of the snaps in every game. Jamie, you remember as much as I do. All offseason long, the Titans could talk about both running backs. We're going to use them both evenly. It hasn't happened. Pollard's been the guy. He's also had at least 19 touches in 3 of his last 4 games, and you talked about the matchup. I think it's awesome. I think he's a terrific start of the week. Good call by you. But I want to know what other starts you have, Jamie. Lay it on us.
Yeah, I think Darnell Mooney's in a great spot. You know, both him and Kirk Cousins coming off the game that they just had. You see Cousins taking on this Panthers defense. They're terrible, coming off a 500-yard game. Only one quarterback so far this season has been under 20 fantasy points against Carolina, and that's Justin Herbert, and that's really just because he didn't throw the ball and will not throw the ball because of how this offense operates. But you look at what Darnell Mooney has done, and the setup has just been absolutely fantastic. Really, as the third option coming into the season, you can make the case now he's the second option. But based on last week, you could say he's the first option with how many targets he had in that game against Tampa Bay. But 6 receivers so far this season scored at least 70.5 PPR points against Carolina. Drake London should go off, and Mooney should definitely be in your starting lineup. Same thing with DeAndre Swift, taking on a Jacksonville defense that clearly has struggled against the run. You saw Trey Sermon last week, for example, 6 catches, 25 yards. He scored a touchdown. Swift, the last 2 games, has looked like the running back I'm sure the Bears paid. 120 total yards in both games, 23 touches in both games, scored a touchdown in both games. While Roschon Johnson's taking some touchdowns away, you're still getting quality production from DeAndre Swift. So it's time to just forget about what we said after the first 3 weeks when somebody stupidly said you might want to drop DeAndre Swift. He's performed admirably the last 2 games and should keep it up once again against this Jacksonville defense.
I was nervous about Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney coming into the week, and when I saw how few pass attempts guys like Derek Carr had against the Carolina Panthers, I thought to myself, okay, Kirk Cousins can put up some numbers, and then I actually think the Panthers can compete in that game against the Falcons, which means Kirk Cousins won't just have to throw just a few pass attempts. I think he'll be good. I think that's a good call at quarterback. But a quarterback that I like a little bit better is Justin Fields of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yeah, he's on the hot seat. We know that Russell Wilson might be coming for that job sooner than later. But I've liked what I've seen from Justin Fields over his last 3 games. He's had at least 20 fantasy points in 2 of them. And he's taking on a Raiders defense. At least 27 fantasy points. I said 27 fantasy points to 2 of the last 3 quarterbacks that they faced. That includes Andy Dalton. That includes Bo Nix last week. So I think it's a really good matchup for Justin Fields. But the name I really want to highlight on this list, Jamie, it's Chase Brown. I've been saying for weeks that he's been the best Bengals running backs. Last 2 weeks, he's proved it. 16 plus PPR in each of those games. I'll still be into him if Zach Moss plays. But I just look at this Giants run defense, 5 yards per carry on the year. They did well against Seattle last week. It's because Seattle did not run very much in that game. They probably should have. They might have won the game. Calvin Ridley, I think his ADOT's coming down. I think his production will go up. I think Indianapolis' pass defense is predictable. It's also beatable. 6 wideouts in 5 games have hit at least 15 PPR points against Indianapolis. I think Ridley's next in line. Jameson Williams, just high upside play in a matchup going up against the Cowboys, should be a high-scoring game. And then Tucker Kraft, a must-start at this point. He scored the 3rd most PPR fantasy points among tight ends, 17 plus in each of his past 2 games. Jamie, I want to get into my sits, but do you have anything to say about any of the starts?
Yeah, I'm concerned about Justin Fields. You know, you look at what the situation is in Pittsburgh right now, the fact that we're getting reports of Russell Wilson maybe even getting some opportunities to play in this game. I can't start Justin Fields. I love the matchup. I love everything you said about his opportunity to play well, but I just can't trust it. So we could see a situation where we get to Sunday and, hey, Mike Tomlin decided, you know what, Russell Wilson's better for our team, or we get in that game and Justin Fields has some sort of silly mistake, and Russell Wilson's taking over. So the uncertainty makes me concerned about Fields as a must-start quarterback. I think in a 2-quarterback Superflex league, you take the chance with him. But in a 1-quarterback league, just based on the uncertainty, I can't call him a start.
I don't have any quarterback sits on my list this week, but I do have a running back that I'm very concerned about. It's Jerome Ford. We know that the clock is ticking on him becoming a decent fantasy running back. I don't think it's going to happen. Nick Chubb on the way back. 13 or fewer touches in 3 of his past 4 games. That offensive line is a wreck. Philadelphia's run defense, I think that they're going to be good coming off of the bye. A little bit worried about both Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave with Spencer Rattler under center for the Saints. He doesn't have outstanding arm strength. He does have mobility, but I expect a short area target, rhythm passing game. I think it's something that Tampa Bay can exploit, and you know they're going to blitz them like crazy. Jacoby Myers going up against the Steelers. Steelers just shut down CeeDee Lamb. They did a great job against Drake London earlier this year. I don't think Aiden O'Connell will be as effective coming off the bench like Joe Flacco was a couple of weeks ago. Mark Andrews, 14 targets through 5 games. I can't trust him. I need to see more from him first. And then in the case of Dallas Goedert, and I think you might disagree with me on this one, but you'll let me know, it's just the fact that A.J. Brown's back, Devontae Smith's back, and it's a Browns defense that's been great against tight ends this year, Jamie. Makes me nervous to trust Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, it's tough to say sit Dallas Goedert, though, just based on what the opportunities and options are out there for you. Like, I'm not starting Dalton Schultz or Conklin over Dallas Goedert at this point. Like Tucker Kraft, you picked him up to replace Goddard. That's certainly understandable to stick with him, but I think he's still in your lineup by default. So you're still probably starting Dallas Goedert with the hope that you're getting something in the end zone with Jalen Hurts coming off a bye. I got a couple of running backs that make me nervous this week, Dave, and that's Rico Dowdle and Rachaad White. White's been sort of obvious based on how Bucky Irving is taking over snap shares in this backfield and making things uncomfortable for White. Rico Dowdle's coming off 2 great games. Last week was fantastic for him against Pittsburgh, but this matchup is brutal against the Lions. And the nice thing is that it's his job, and they're going into their bye week next week, so unless something crazy happens, he's going to be the guy moving forward. But for this week against Detroit, while he's caught a touchdown each of the last 2 weeks, I'm not counting on his role in the passing game to carry him. The Lions just been fantastic against every running back that they face, number 3 in fewest fantasy points allowed to the position. Amari Cooper gets 8 targets a game. This is a bad secondary he's facing for the Eagles. I don't care. Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper just not connecting at this point. So in 3 receiver leagues, you're still starting him. 2 receiver leagues, you get away from Amari Cooper. I hope they trade Cooper at this point. Buffalo should be calling. Kansas City should be calling. Any team that needs a receiver should be calling. Get Amari Cooper out of Cleveland at this point. And you mentioned Rashid Shaheed. I have Chris Olave as a sit. You're looking at Spencer Rattler. I love what he said in his introductory press conference yesterday as a starting quarterback. I'm going to throw the ball to Chris Olave. I need to see it so far because he's been a bust with Derek Carr. He's not producing at a high level. This Tampa Bay defense is not the reason why you're sitting him. You're sitting him because of the quarterback situation. So hopefully Olave delivers. Hopefully Shaheed delivers. But until we see it, obviously we're a little bit concerned about these Saints wideouts.
I think Olave's okay in a 3-receiver league. I think Christian Kirk is okay in a 3-receiver league, especially if it's PPR, with you all the way on Amari Cooper.
The thing about Kirk, though, is you got Evan Ingram coming back, and now you're talking about facing a good defense in the Chicago Bears that have done fantastic against opposing wide receivers. It's been the best part of this defense. So Kirk, 3-receiver leagues, yes. You can start in 2-receiver leagues.
Absolutely right. That's very true. Jamie, I appreciate you being on. Those are our starts and sits for week number 6. And if you want to know more, Jamie and I and the rest of our award-winning Fantasy Football Today podcast crew deliver the information every Thursday, every Friday on YouTube and whatever platform you download your podcast from. Check us out.